Hello everybody, so this is going to be a video about Elliot Rodger, and the last video I made ironically was actually about the perils of calling yourself an MRA, because if something happens, even if Elliot Rodger wasn't an MRA, which he wasn't clearly, you will still get some of the stigma that happens if the media makes it out to be that Elliot Rodger is, say, an MRA when he's not. But I've been thinking, and there's been a lot of hypocrisy from the feminism and from the media about this whole Elliot Rodger thing. Now, before I begin, I just want to say, when I think about gender, and in fact, people other than myself, I always try to think about it from their perspective, try and get in their shoes, for instance. So, for instance, I genuinely believe women are concerned about, say, media expectations. I genuinely feel for them in that respect. Um, it's not that I think it's trivial. It's just that I think, let's say for instance, take page 3 on the Sun newspaper, and half-naked women in the news, right? Um, you're right not to feel, say, offended um, or self-conscious. Doesn't trump, say, the right to freedom of speech. And I think that's the difference between feminism and the MRA. Feminism wants to take away rights, or at least restrict rights, in favour of special treatment towards women, which could end up backfiring anyway. And the MRA, on the other hand, are actually after rights, such as 50-50 parenting, or getting rid of the draft, etc. All these kind of things. But anyway, I want to talk about the hypocrisy and the double standards, and here's why. Take, for instance, Valerie Salanas. She killed Andy Warhol and created the Scum Manifesto, so there's great similarities there. She wrote that she attempted the murder because Andy had, quote, too much control over her life. Rodger made some similar remarks about women in his manifesto. Both had a manifesto and both were mentally ill. However, Valerie got sympathy and her mental illness wasn't questioned. So far, I haven't seen any sympathy. Not that I think it's deserved necessarily for Rodgers. I mean, you've got to balance it out with personal responsibility. I have, however, seen his mental illness questioned, which, if you read his manifesto, the guy was clearly off the deep end. Then there is the so-called connection between the manosphere and the MRA, which is simply false. He was simply a failed pick-up artist. Definitely red pill, but so is the Bible, and we don't blame the Bible for it. Despite it being self-evident that Valerie was a feminist, she hasn't been used by MRAs or society in general about the motives of feminism as a whole. She is recognized for what she is, and that is a lunatic and a fruitcake. This is despite feminists actually praising Valerie Salanas after the attempted murder, which would end up killing him many years later. Despite this, what is the representation of Rodger in the media and on Twitter? He is used as an example of all men, a sort of guilt by association, a toxic masculinity. Again, he, like Salanas, is mentally ill, and both had appalling childhoods. So, what if the roles were reversed? What if a woman had committed such assault with the manifesto of Elliot Rodger, just with gender reversed? I feel she would have got much more sympathy. In fact, I'm pretty certain of it. If she had made this manifesto and killed men, it would be praised as, say, a responsible, well, not praised, phrased rather, as a response against patriarchy. The media would say that she was a victim of the male gaze of media expectations. It would be forgotten, just like many other female behaviours that are hidden under the rug, and I say this without judgment. For instance, the high rate of infanticide by women. Also, Elliot was a part of bodybuilding.com and was self-conscious about his height. Shouldn't feminists be making notes here? If they can talk about the male gaze, why not acknowledge this man was a victim of the female gaze? And on top of that, he was also well aware of hypergamy. And hypergamy is not something that we can just say doesn't exist. We know it exists because we can see the statistical evidence. So why aren't we making conversations about, say, women approaching men? And asking men out instead of having Elliot being frightened to death of having to ask women out in order for relationships. Why aren't we talking about changing women so that they aren't as materialistic in their search for a husband, which which we know is true. I've seen reports in Japan about women basically there's a hypergamy factor going on, which is reducing the birth rate. The female gaze is far more intense than the male gaze, and here's the and despite this, the feminist question isn't about what led him to go about it. It's not about the cultural pressures on men in order to get the courage to ask women out, for instance. Instead, it's more about let's change masculinity. Let's change masculinity. It's a vulturous kind of opportunistic way of hell. It's Briffault's law, isn't it? Really, we've got to change masculinity because men are threatening to us. But here's the final and most actually kind of frightening thing. What if the police did search Elliot Rodger's room, and Elliot Rodgers is a woman? And what if they did find this manifesto, or let's say they found a YouTube video saying, "Let's kill all men. I'm gonna kill all men. I'm gonna shoot." Well, nothing would happen, would it? I mean, what about RadFemHub? RadFemHub is full of this shit, and there is sufficient evidence in RadFemHub that they are using their positions, such as being in teachers, and that they are fantasizing about killing the male kids. What's going on? If the roles were reversed, even if a woman did, she wouldn't be arrested. She wouldn't be taken into clinic. They wouldn't take her seriously, and that's probably the most